Hello again, everyone. I'm Stan Scott,
And I'm Scott Kay.
and this is the Foggy Bottom Line Podcast, episode 2. Today, we're going to jump right in on some of the signs that America is sort of, if not already an authoritarian state, then at least moving in that direction with the federal government occupying American cities with federal agents, with the federal government using those federal agents to go after political enemies, as in the John Bolton case. And Scott, you had a Facebook post up this morning touching on some of this, so I thought I'd let you go ahead and get us started.
Sure. The circles I run in and the folks I've been talking to, we've been talking about the rise or spread of authoritarianism as something in the future, something for us to be on guard against, but we haven't thought about it in the immediate time frame. And more and more, I'm thinking that we've crossed the threshold into a period of time where we could be considered to have an authoritarian state here in the United States. You and I, we're political scientists. We studied international relations and political comparative politics. And if you look at a lot of the academic definitions of an authoritarian state that we used to use to analyze developing countries, the United States right now has really stepped over the line in almost every one of those categories.
I absolutely agree, and let's talk about for the audience, because there might be a lot of folks out there who haven't really studied this in any depth, like you and I have. A lot of my research work during graduate school was on social movements, including the rise of the right wing and how things work, what fascism looks like on the ground. So let's go ahead and touch on some of these sort of signs. How do you define fascism? If we're going to define fascism or authoritarianism, how will we define that?
Yeah, so I'd rather stick with the term authoritarianism because I think it's less emotionally loaded, and it's a little more academically, maybe balanced. But the principal characteristic in political science literature about authoritarians is that they've concentrated the political power into the hands of a single person or a very, very small group of people. And ever since Trump 2.0 started in January, beginning with day one, we've seen this very dramatic concentration of power into the executive. And not just in executive agencies, but in the White House.
Right.
And Congress, the normal check and balance on that, has really yielded and ceded power and authority to the president, which further concentrates it. And just having power in and of itself doesn't make it authoritarian, but when that power is wielded without respect to the rules and constitution, rule of law, then it becomes authoritarian. And we've seen that the president has been very willing to bust norms and to announce policies that on their face appear to be in contradiction to the Constitution. And his response is, well, prove it. Tell me I'm wrong. Rather than obey those norms, he's testing and probing. And unfortunately, the courts that are supposed to be that other balance against executive power, they appear to be asleep at the switch, or either that or more highly partisan than what I ever expected of the United States Supreme Court being.
I think that if you look at the folks that wrote the Constitution and, they constructed it, and we'll get into this in a future episode, how a lot of the structure of the Constitution, how much of it was influenced by slavery. There's a great book out there about the anti-democratic components of the U.S. Constitution. But I think if you were Hamilton and Madison and Jefferson writing the Constitution, one of the key assumptions they made was that Congress would protect its power. It would protect its Article I powers, right? Without regard to whether who the political party of the president that was trying to take those powers, or a court system that was trying to overstep its power. They expected Congress to step up and say, no, you can't do that. And one of the signs of the authoritarianism you're talking about, where you talk about concentrating power in one person or a small group of people, one of the things Donald Trump has done is tried to capture the Article 1 powers of Congress, the power to make regulations, the power to spend money even, the power to create agencies and then give them a mission. And, through the Doe process, they closed agencies with no authority from Congress of any kind. They told, for example, universities, you're not going to get your federal grants if you don't get rid of your DEI programs, right? But those funds were appropriated by Congress for a purpose. And the Article 2 does not give the president the power to usurp that, to take that money and not spend it in the way Congress directed, right?
Right, and related to that is the power of taxation, which is clearly given to Congress. But tariffs are taxes, and the president unilaterally is imposing these new taxes on. He makes it sound like it's the foreign countries that are exporting things to us, but it's really on the American people and American business that those taxes, have to be paid. And the legal pretext that he's used to do this is he's declared a bogus emergency. And during the state of emergency, the executive traditionally has gained more powers than what they would normally have. But he's taken that to a whole new level. And you started to talk about some of the ways that he's been exercising that power. And that's really where I think the danger is. While we've been talking about the Constitution and rule of law, that's kind of esoteric to many people. But when he starts firing people without cause,
right.
When he cancels contracts and loans or grants and funding without, arbitrarily, when he occupies a peaceful city under the pretext of fighting crime, when he sends the FBI to shake down his political critics, or like he just did with John Bolton, and I bet you Chris Christie, and there's probably a couple others that probably are on that list. He's been shaking down American corporations, private enterprise. He told Walmart that they can't pass on the tariff, and threatened them if they did. And just over the weekend, he extorted a 10% equity stake in Intel just to grant them the privilege of being able to export their microchips. So it's a whole mismatch of different actions that are being taken.
You mentioned the Intel thing, and that's actually, in some ways, one of the things that differentiates the Trump version of authoritarianism from fascism itself, right? There's a lot of the same stuff, right? There's a cult of masculinity. There's the demonization of the other, blaming foreigners on our problems, those kinds of things. But one of the things that the Nazis never did was take over corporations.
Right.
They didn't do that. But it's a very authoritarian move, and it's in some sense, like you said, extortion, because you're basically saying, if you want to do business in this country, you got to give the federal government to give me some of this money. And it's a consolidation of power that looks an awful lot like Donald Trump wants to join this group of transnational oligarchs, multi-billionaires. A lot of people don't think about it, but Elon Musk is from South Africa, right? Peter Thiel, another billionaire who's very influential in this administration, he's the J.D. Vance mentor. He's from South Africa. And Vladimir Putin is a transnational billionaire. And these folks are either trying to destroy nation states or capture them so that they can operate in the international realm, and make more money and control things without the states having the capacity or the will to push back.
Right,
So
right. It's kind of we're seeing the fusion of kleptocracy and authoritarianism. Uh, and I'm not sure which one has precedence. Are they using authoritarian tactics to establish a kleptocracy, or are they using a kleptocracy to develop an authoritarian, political environment? Uh,
I think it's important to think about the folks. Sorry, folks, my nose is itching today for some reason. I think one of the things to look at is who is behind this guy, who's behind Trump, who is pushing this, and there's of course the oligarch version of this. I don't have any illusions that Peter Thiel is anything but an atheist or a Christian who doesn't care much about Christianity. But a lot of the supporters, a lot of the push behind Donald Trump in this project, the Project 2025 thing, which in some sense is about creating a white Christian ethno state. So, and this is another sense in which this isn't really very much like fascism, the way we understood it from the 30s, but it's very much authoritarianism because it creates a sort of rule book, right, for the way we're all supposed to live and behave and treat each other and all that. That's based on a particular small group's version of or interpretation of what's in the Bible, and that's very that's very scary if you're not that particular kind of Christian,
right,
or if you're not Christian at all,
right.
right?
It's kind of like Christian Sharia law, and
Yeah, very much so.
yeah,
Absolutely right. And
for the morals, the interpretation of God's will for mankind is interpreted by uh, someone who imposes it on the whole population, uh,
right, right,
regardless of their role. But this is we're talking about something that's really uh, huge. It's really big, and it's really scary. And a lot of people I've been talking to uh, are starting to despair and wonder what can we do? Who's going to come save us? Are the midterms going to save us? Are the elections going to save us? Is Gavin Newsom going to save us? Is Jesus going to come and save us again? You know, uh, but
well,
I don't think anyone's coming. I don't.
well, Jesus isn't. I know that.
Yeah,
I know that because well, I guess no one really knows that for certain. I would bet against it,
yeah,
pretty heavily.
yeah. So
I think that, well, to me, one of the failures is that the opposition, the people who at least declare their opposition to this, and have power, are not using that power when they have it,
right,
right? And there are little things that, for example, Democratic Party senators today could do, whether effectual or not, while they're in the minority, is they could simply vote against every Trump appointee, right? For the most part, they're going to get, installed in office
they're going to
anyway.
get
They're going to get
steamrolled
approved
anyway.
anyway,
Right,
right? Unless you can peel some Republicans off for the, the more odious ones. Getz was not approved and would not have been because some Republicans thought that was a bridge too far. At least they did, earlier this year. That might change as we go forward. But, you have senators like, Tim Kaine and Mark Warner who have voted against the worst ones, but still voted for some of them, like Marco Rubio,
right.
presumably because of this Brotherhood of the Senate thing, whatever the hell that means. And that's counterproductive. But more importantly, when we did have power, right, we didn't use it. I saw something on Facebook the other day. Someone said something like, so let me get this straight. The Democrats created all the Russia stuff, right? But they let Trump win in 2016 anyway, right? So they had all this stuff on Trump, but they let him win anyway. And then they win in 2020, and they still have all this stuff on Trump, and now they're in power, but they let Trump win again in 2024. So how does that work? I mean, and we let Mitch McConnell break the norm on Senate approval of Supreme Court justices by refusing to even hold hearings for Merrick Garland, right? Uh-huh. But then when Trump was in virtually the same situation, the year of an election, then he had a chance to appoint someone. Suddenly that doesn't count anymore. That we're back to the original norm where you hold hearings anyway. And just to kind of circle back to the founders again, one of the things we have to have for a constitutional government to operate is a set of norms and shared understandings about what right looks like. How should this look, right? And, the blue slip thing, it sounds great. If those of you who don't know what a blue slip is, this allows senators to block appointment of a federal court judge who would preside over cases in their state, right? So if Tim Kaine didn't want a Trump justice a Trump judge to oversee cases in Virginia, Tim Kaine could block it and thereby try to get Trump to propose a more moderate justice or judge, right? And it's Chuck Grassley. I mean, it's who's the senator from Illinois? Durbin. Dick Durbin is the guy who continued to allow Republicans to use the blue slip, right? During Trump's first, during Obama's administration, continued letting Republicans use the blue slip during Biden's administration. And then now that they have power, they're not using it anymore. So you get extremist right-wing justices and judges, but not extremist, liberal justices and judges. And this is a broken norm this is a really good sign that authoritarianism is coming when they feel like they can just break these norms, ignore them, and get away with it. No shame.
Yeah. So I think you're making kind of my argument, Stan, is that those that we would normally turn to and historically have turned to be leaders and to solve the problems, we can't count on them anymore. So either because they're acting out of self-interest or out of fear or just concern about their own career and getting reelected for whatever reason, and it's probably a little bit of everything for all of them. They're not standing up. They're not leading, which really makes us have to ask, well, what can we do? What can be done? And we have a federalist form of government. We tend to focus on at the federal level, the national level, as the place where all of our nation's problems are solved and things are worked out. But we have 50 states, and we have a myriad of counties and cities and towns. We have local government that has a lot of power, individually and actually collectively. And Democrats have been really lax at focusing on those contests and electing good leaders at the state level and at the local level.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas starting about 2004, the Republicans figured it out and they started stacking the state houses in all these states, which is why we have these Republican trifectas and veto-proof majorities that can pass these really crazy laws and do redistricting in the middle of the decade and things like that. So I think Democrats should start focusing more on the local level.
Absolutely right. And if you remember during the Biden administration, when the Congress was looking at bringing back the assault weapons ban, right? A lot of counties in Virginia, the red counties in Virginia, their boards of supervisors voted to make those counties what you might call a Second Amendment sanctuary county, right? Saying if you pass this, we're not going to enforce it. The sheriff of Essex County or Hanover County is not going to enforce this. This is the kind of thing, folks, that Republicans do. right? This is how they use power when they have it. Starting at the very bottom level, the very local level, the way they run schools, the way they run county taxation, and this kind of, whether it really has any legal effect, right? I mean, clearly, if an assault weapons ban is in place and the Hanover County Sheriff says they're not going to enforce it, well, the Virginia State Police can still enforce it, and the DEA can enforce it, and the FBI can enforce it, right? Because it's federal law. But whether it has any actual legal effect or practical effect, there's a symbolic effect here,
Right.
That really does matter, and it tells people we have your back, and that's what we're kind of missing from some of our Democratic leaders at the local level now. Is they don't behave as if they have our back. Now, DC is a special case because DC Congress could just basically repeal the home rule laws that give DC residents the power to vote to elect their own city council and their own mayor.
Right. So,
They could theoretically do that.
Yeah, DC is not a state; it's actually a federal possession that only
Right.
whatever rights and authorities that Congress gives to it.
Right. But that's not true for Chicago and Los Angeles and San Francisco and Atlanta, Memphis, New Orleans. All of these, especially the ones that are in blue states, where they want to try to change the behavior of people in blue states and make them afraid to go vote. At the end of the day, that's a big chunk of it.
Right.
Right.
So, right. So, we have in New Jersey and Virginia this year, citizens have an opportunity to exercise their right to vote, to elect people at the local level, to turn back
Right.
some of the nonsense in Washington, and also send a message that they're not okay with the direction that we're going. Whether they're Republicans that are not okay with the direction, or Democrats, or Independents, in 2025 there's an opportunity to send a message to Congress and to the president that we don't like where we're going, and we're going to elect people that are in opposition that will do what they can do in their positions to stand up and against this authoritarian tendency coming from the federal government. And in many ways, it's good because elections are kind of this social safety valve. By voting, voters get to express their opinion, let off steam, and say, "I'm going to show you," and
Right.
get energized about it and have an emotional release, as well as having a real political effect. And so the very first thing is Americans need to exercise their right to vote, and vote aggressively for local leaders that align with their values. Because if we don't, we saw during the history of our own nation, when the King of England throttled all the recourse and throttled back elections and the power of elected delegations to do anything, we saw the frustration that was created, that eventually led to the American Revolution and political violence. And it's kind of ironic to me, Stan, that right where we live right now, it was the cradle of that type of rebellion. So historically, societies that have had a history of autonomy and freedom and independence don't take kindly to having that curtailed. And long term, I'm really concerned about the stability and long term viability of our country if we don't reestablish some balance and voters don't take back control.
Well, one of the things that I think it's wise to touch on, it's smart to touch on, is what can we do, right? And so, just to sort of share a few thoughts of my own, and then I'll get to what you're talking about. I think it's valuable to protest. I think it's valuable to show up at the No Kings protest. It's valuable to show up at the Hands Off protest. It's helpful to do that for a couple of reasons. One, it does send a message to the people in power that Americans are unhappy with the way things are going. But it also builds community, and it lets you know, it lets all of us know that we're not the only ones who feel this way, right? And if you're anxious about all this, if you're a person of color or an immigrant or someone who's speaking out the way Scott and I are, who's worried about what might happen, that knowledge that there are other people out there who agree with you and could at least potentially have your back is very helpful. It's very valuable for your peace of mind. It's valuable for your mental health to know that there are other people out there that share your views. And you remember the event you and I ran into each other at up in DC, the veterans healthcare thing. It was very nice for me to see that there are a lot of veterans who feel this way, right? And I think I mentioned to you earlier the interesting statistic, re-enlistment in the National Guard units that have been deployed to these cities is way down. So the military may not have Donald Trump's back as much as people think. So that's one thing, is you can protest. It's also helpful to call your congressman, call your legislative representatives at the state level, at the congressional level, and tell them you're unhappy. Tell them you're unhappy about something. If you live where we live in the 1st Congressional District with a Republican congressman, that's not going to change his mind, but it's helpful to let folks know. And you know, I call and say, hey, I'm Stan Scott. I live at XXX, and I'm a veteran, and I think this is wrong. And I don't have to tell the guy I'm a Democrat, right? He can find out if he wants to, but that has some power. But the key thing we have to do is you have to run for office like Scott's doing, like I've done in the past. You have to run for school board if you have elected school boards in your area. You have to run for board of supervisors. You have to run for the city council or mayor if you live in a city where those offices exist. You have to run for the House of Delegates. You have to put pressure on these folks and let them know that Americans where you live are unhappy. And that's your chance to speak out. Go support the candidate. Get on the Scott's Facebook page. Get on the Foggy Bottom Line pages. Get on social media and talk about what you think. Share things, comment, like. Let's push this envelope and get these algorithms working. We talked last week about how these algorithms helped Trump win by getting this reactionary sort of misinformation out in the world, and too many people believed it. So it's important this time that we get the right information out there, right? So that we can elect good people like Abigail Spanberger and Ghazala Hashmi and Jay Jones and Scott and Rodney Willett and, you know, others who, you know, Andy Ward, who's running in Eastern Hanover in the 60th. It's critical that we all jump up, we all step up, we all make our voices heard. At least if you're afraid to actually speak out on a podcast or something else, then at least go vote. Go vote. And if you're not a Democrat, if you're a Republican who sees the direction we're traveling, you don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with Scott K. You don't have to agree with Abigail Spanberger. But it's time to step up and put leaders into office who will obstruct this growing authoritarianism, that will put it to a stop, that will put the brakes on this so we can all think about what road we really want to go down and try to protect these institutions as we come up on the 250th birthday of those institutions.
Right.
And it would be a shame if authoritarians were able to hijack it right when it's a quarter, 250 years old.
Right, right. And Stan and I have just talked about a number of ways that people can take action and do things. The important thing is that you take action if you're not happy with the direction we're going. You can't sit on your butt. You can't wait for someone to come right up on a white steed in shiny armor and save the day. The cavalry's not going to come.
No, we
We
are the cavalry.
we are the cavalry. Uh,
We
so,
are the cavalry.
so get out and do something. Make some good
Yep.
trouble. Uh, support those that are making good trouble. Uh,
Yep.
but whatever you do, don't just be passive. And
Yep.
the other thing is uh, you need to talk to people in your circle that you know don't agree with
Right.
you or haven't agreed with you in the past,
Right.
and have this same kind of discussion with them that we're having with you. And let's get more people uh, off their butts on the streets, walking the neighborhoods, knocking the doors, making calls, uh, posting on social media. Uh, yeah. Our charge as the cavalry to save us is to do something.
And when I say we are the cavalry, I don't mean me. I don't mean Scott. I don't mean other people who run for office. I mean everyone out there listening to this who doesn't think the United States of America should go down an authoritarian road, who don't want people like Donald Trump to have all the power. You're the cavalry. You're the ones that need to help us to step up, write your congressman, go to a protest, but most of all, run for office, vote, do everything we can. Don't cower in fear. Americans are not afraid. We're not afraid. We are Americans, and we have to step up and do what we can. Now, if you have something really to worry about, being deported or losing your job, we understand that. But you can still vote. You can still talk to your circle of friends. You can still do everything you can within those bounds to spread the word that you find this unacceptable. And that's really, in some sense, the project for this podcast, is to let everyone that listens to this know that we think it's unacceptable. Now, we don't think the Democrats are right about everything. Absolutely not. And neither one of us is really a socialist. But what Donald Trump and the Republicans are doing right now is completely unacceptable. It's an authoritarian project, whether it's a Christian national project or not. And it's about making wealthy people wealthier and poor people poor. It's unacceptable for Americans to go down this road.
Yeah. So Stan, I think we're doing what my kids accuse me of doing all the time, is beating a dead horse. I think
Right.
we've said our piece. We've repeated it and
Yep.
emphasized it, and this is probably a good time and place to wrap up for this week. Uh,
I think
and
so. Um, yeah, I think you're right. We're right at 30 minutes. And folks, we want to try to keep these podcasts to right at 30 minutes so that you can listen to them on your walk or on your commute. But you don't have, it's not going to be we're not going to do 2-hour podcasts like some of these guys do. So we'll wrap up for today. What I'd like to do is really let you folks know, Scott, you want to do your pluggables, your Facebook and all that real quick, and I'll put a line on it so that people can read it.
yeah, so as you could tell during our discussion, I'm a candidate for the Virginia House of Delegates in District 59, and my website is Scott K4VA, Scott K, the number 4, VA.com. I've developed a few more in a little bit more depth on a wider range of issues, some of the things that we've talked about. Check it out. I would appreciate your support. And as you're getting off your butt to do something, keep in mind that I would consider it an honor for you uh, to help my campaign to do what we can do in our little neck of the woods here. So thanks.
And you can find me at foggybottomline.com. I'm also on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Foggy Bottom Line. Just get out there. We're not going to ask for money. This is not going to be a subscription podcast. People are broke enough as it is. But if you do want to support this project, you can go to Foggy Bottom Line and find out how to do that there. So, Scott, thanks again for this week. We'll get back together again next week. We're going to do this weekly. keep an eye out for some shorter, like 3, 4, 5 minute sort of videos coming from me and from Scott in the meantime. But get out there and do something. Have a great week, everyone, and enjoy your day. And, just keep on plugging, because that's all any of us can do right now.
And have a happy Labor Day weekend.
Happy Labor Day weekend. Take care, everyone. We're going to sign off. Have a good afternoon. We'll see you soon. Okay. Let me get just carry on a little bit so I can, if I have to edit the end of that a little bit.
Yeah, so, mine. Here.